الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي. ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في غزة وفي لبنان وفي إيران وفي اليمن وفي العراق وفي مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا وعن عبادك في غزة وفي الضفة وفي لبنان وفي اليمن وفي مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. آمين. So, we had stopped here. Mass mobilization campaigns play a major role in enhancing state legitimacy. So basically, we had started from here, from the claim that China does not, no, not that one. Second one, China is no longer a dictatorship of the proletariat, but it is a dictatorship nevertheless. And the Maoist political program and infrastructure has been modified but not abandoned. I hold this view because, so these are all points to sort of support the claim made here. So it's a dictatorship, but not the dictatorship of the proletariat. It's a dictatorship of the party, and the state has sprawled. Sphere of social intervention has expanded, not shrunk. That's one reason. An important reason is second, planning hasn't been abandoned. So one major difference between one major difference between liberal capitalism and Marxist capitalism is that liberal capitalism is no planning asset. The planning happened through a stock exchange, ultimately in the advanced capitalism. On the other hand, in Marxist socialist capitalism, you have planning the state. So you have 5-year plans, 10-year plans. Obviously, then you have hybrid capitalisms, which nationalist capitalism, social democratic capitalisms, which in one form or the other was prevalent after World War II, even in the so-called liberal capitalist world order, American camp, for example. So the planning, uh, was partially adopted by what we generally call capitalist countries as well. So these are three different ways in capitalism. Um, three different versions of capitalism. The state promotes social atomization of individuals through intensified. So competition is a way to atomize individuals, break the families, larger groupings, and then maybe reorganize them in different groupings or different associations or organization or institutions. That's a way to form a different relationship between individual and the state. So individual stands. So there's a state. Here is the individual. Now, obviously, state has more power to redefine individuality and all those things. Obviously, this happens in non-dictatorships as well, but the means are different. Mass mobilization campaigns play an important role in enhancing state legitimacy. So we had stopped here. So today, public investment remains large. Public states at different level remain large, and state firms continue to produce a large proportion of total output. The state itself is a capitalist state in that way. So America is a capitalist state in the sense that it protects capital and provide it legal and administrative and defense framework. But Chinese state is capitalist in the sense that it is actual participant in the capitalist accumulation. Obviously, these things are all relative. Factionalization of all party and government levels and bargaining at top largely determine political factionalization within Communist Party, central, then regional Communist parties and central government and regional governments, competition among them. So this is a typical way in which Communist parties work. Party declaration and ad hoc and administrative decrees are major instruments for policy articulation. Party ad hoc and administrative decrees are the major instruments. So parties, there's a party dictatorship and party. It's hard to differentiate between party and the state, obviously. Modernization remains the raison d'etre of CCP's monopoly of political modernization development. Modernization of the state development at different levels. That's what provides its legitimacy. And part of it is to improve the life of the people, their material standards. Promotion of Chinese economic interests is the principle pursued by Chinese foreign policy. Very materialistic in that sense. So that sort of state, like obviously America is very materialistic as well, but it also spawns the ideology of capitalism or liberalism in different way, in which China doesn't, you know, whatever ideological stuff is, it's within the country. So it's not a propagation, or what, how should we frame it? Um, there's no concept of proselytization. That's what you call it. There is a widespread merger of state and private sector bureaucracies and continued party presence at the factory level. So businessmen and business interests take over, are part of party, as well as party is part of business as well. So there's in a sense, sort of a two-way street here. They both affect each other. Can such a state, can such a state aspire to achieve hegemonic status within the global capitalist order, become the state of the capital in general? So, China, obviously, it's a state of the capital, Chinese capital for sure. But can it become the state of the capital in general? It's important to understand. So hegemonic status discussed here is the hegemon of the capital in general. Okay, so the capitalism is important for capitalism is capital. This drive to accumulate for the sake of accumulation. That's what capitalism is. Now this happens at two levels. So you have a particular company or individual who want to accumulate capital for the sake of accumulation, for itself or themselves or herself. So that's a specific capital, particular capital. That can be at the level of firm, at the level of individual, at the level of state, etc. But there's an interest of capital in general, which means you are not concerned about making capital accumulation for the sake of capital accumulation for yourself, but in general you think that's a good thing, that's a desirable thing, and you dedicate your life to that purpose. Okay, so this is a sort of ideological commitment to capital. You might not be making money for yourself. I mean, obviously, that's not your main overriding. So overriding purpose. So you are a soldier of capital in general, and capital as a way of life, as a civilization, whatever. So capital needs a state. So particular capital needs particular state, but interests of capital in general need a state as well to defend it, to safeguard it, to prepare the environment for it. And capital, obviously, in this sense, capital is universal. So it needs a universal state, but capital never had a universal state. So it had states which come close to being universal, but they both contradiction in all those states, in that they were also nation states. So they were also defending capital in a particular capital. So there was always contradiction, tension between the interests of capital in particularly in the interests of capital in general. Okay, so you had Britain. Britain was a British state concerned with British capital, but it was also a defender of universal capitalism, defending the interests of capital in general. And after Britain came America, because and America had the same problem. On the one hand, it is a nation state defending the interests of American capital. On the other hand, it is a global state defending the interests of capital in general. And it can't do it consistently, because at the end of the day, it's nation state, its political orientation is national, its legitimacy is nationalist. So it does defend the interests of capital in general, but inconsistently and increasingly. There's a conflict. So if America is weakened and no longer is able to play the role of the global hegemon of the capital, can China play such a role? That's the question. And this paper say that it's not ready to play this role because it's a nation state focused on accumulating capital for the sake of China. And that's its basic and ultimate goal. It doesn't have any pretensions to defend or look after the interests of capital in general, which any liberal American state cannot totally abandon, or even like Marxist state like Soviet Union never could actually abandon totally, even though increasingly can't play that role consistently. So this is the thing. Okay, so can such a state aspire, such a state which we have just described, to achieve hegemonic status within global capitalist order today? Because today capitalist global order is universal, so it needs universal state more than ever. So one broadly similar state, Bismarck's Germany, tried to achieve a global hegemonic status and was defeated by America. In my view, it is unlikely that China will embrace similar ambitions, but China does not need the living space, a Lebanon, access to which determined the German political strategy during 1871-1944. Lebanon, of which, so that's why one of the purposes of attacking Russia was to create a living space for Germany, which Hitler talks about in his Mein Kampf. But obviously the concept is not Hitlerian; it's pre-Hitlerian. It is Bismarckian as well. So, moreover, the difference in military capacity of China and the United States is so large that, well, this was written 10, 15 years ago, and that difference remained, but I think the gap is closing. So this argument is not that solid today as it was 12 years ago or so, or 15 years ago or so. So large that contesting global military is currently unlikely to be seen as a realistic policy objective by CC, China. Okay, so I think we'll stop here and we'll continue from here, inshallah, next time. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين.